When police found Roberto Calvi hanging beneath Blackfriars Bridge in London, the scene defied explanation. His pockets were stuffed with bricks. His shoes bore mud from somewhere else. $15,000 in cash sat neatly in his jacket. The press called it suicide. The Mafia called it a warning. The Vatican called it inconvenient. But Calvi's death was not the end of a story. It was the unveiling of a network that spanned continents, empires and institutions that were supposed to be beyond reproach. He was more than a banker. He was God's banker. And the empire he built hid in plain sight. To understand why a devout Catholic ended up swinging beneath a bridge, we must go back almost a century. In 1929, Pope Pius V signed the Lateran Treaty with Benito Mussolini. The deal was simple on paper. It made the Vatican a sovereign state, guaranteed the Church's independence, and compensated it for centuries of lost property. Mussolini paid 1.75 billion lire in cash and government bonds, forming the foundation of the Vatican's modern fortune. To manage it, the Church created the Istituto per le Opere di Religione, the Vatican Bank, or IOR. Its mission was spiritual: fund religious projects and charities. Its practical advantage was earthly: no taxes, no audits, no oversight. For the first time, the Vatican controlled a financial fortress in the heart of Rome. By the 1960s, the Vatican Bank had become one of the world's most secretive institutions. It could move money anywhere, for anyone, invisible to regulators. And as the Cold War escalated, that secrecy became more than a convenience. It became a tool of power. Enter Banco Ambrosiano, Italy's Catholic-linked bank, chaired by Roberto Calvi. He was ambitious, charming, devout, and relentlessly creative. He saw opportunity where others saw risk. Calvi built an intricate web of offshore shell companies in Panama, Luxembourg, Nassau, and South America. On paper, these companies were independent. In practice, they were instruments of Ambrosiano, often guaranteed by the Vatican Bank. Calvi orchestrated massive loans to these phantom entities. The Vatican signed letters promising repayment, but the companies didn't exist. The loans were fiction. The money vanished into offshore accounts, only to reappear through intermediaries funding political causes, covert operations, and organized crime. Billions moved silently, under the cover of religion. During the Cold War, the Vatican shared a goal with Western intelligence: stop communism. Some of Ambrosiano's hidden funds reached Solidarity, the Polish labor movement led by Lech Wałęsa, which would weaken Soviet control. Other funds went darker routes: right-wing regimes in Latin America, black market arms, and heroin trafficked by the Sicilian Mafia. Morality became a currency, and the Church, in a strange irony, became a conduit for God and global power. At the center of this network was Archbishop Paul Marcinkus, the American head of the Vatican Bank. Known as the Gorilla, he towered over most men and earned the loyalty of Popes Paul XVI and John Paul II. Marcinkus and Calvi became partners in a parallel global banking system, one that hid billions, shielded criminals, and funded ideologies. For a time, it worked flawlessly. Ambrosiano's profits soared. Calvi was hailed as God's banker. But empires built on illusion eventually fracture. In 1978, Italian regulators noticed anomalies. Ambrosiano had moved staggering sums abroad without authorization. Calvi was arrested and convicted of currency violations. Then, mysteriously, he was released and reinstated. New accounts kept surfacing. Anonymous companies, letters of guarantee from the Vatican Bank, untraceable transfers. Ambrosiano was no longer laundering money alone. It was sustaining an ecosystem of influence, political, religious, and criminal. The Vatican was no innocent bystander. By the early 1980s, the numbers collapsed. Ambrosiano's foreign loans exceeded its capital. Over $1.3 billion had disappeared. Calvi, desperate, wrote to Pope John Paul II, warning that a bank collapse would expose the Vatican's financial network. He received no reply. On June 17, 1982, he fled Italy with cash and documents allegedly detailing the Church's involvement. 10 days later, he was found hanging beneath Blackfriars Bridge. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. Blackfriars, a nickname for the Dominican order, was also associated with P2, an underground Masonic lodge of businessmen, politicians, and spies. Calvi was a member. So were generals, financiers, and Secret Service agents. His death was both a message and a warning. His secretary, Graziella Corrocher, had already fallen from Ambrosiano's Milan offices. Within weeks, Ambrosiano collapsed entirely. The investigation that followed was unprecedented. Auditors traced billions through dozens of shell companies and offshore havens. The trail always led back to the Vatican Bank. Officials denied responsibility. Marcinkus claimed the IOR was only a shareholder, not liable for Ambrosiano's debts. Investigators had letters signed by Marcinkus guaranteeing loans totaling hundreds of millions. Italy's prosecutors wanted him arrested. Vatican sovereignty protected him. He remained untouchable behind its walls for years. Forensic accountants discovered ties between Ambrosiano, the Sicilian Mafia, South American cartels, and Latin American death squads. The Vatican's role in these operations remains officially unclear, but the evidence showed it functioned as a conduit for political funding, part of a broader anti-communist strategy backed by Western intelligence. Within months of Calvi's death, several figures tied to Ambrosiano also died. Overdoses, accidents, and unexplained suicides eliminated witnesses. By 1984, the Vatican negotiated a $250 million settlement with Italian authorities, a goodwill payment, not an admission of guilt. Marcinkus remained until 1989, retiring quietly in the United States. Calvi's death, decades later, was confirmed as murder. His injuries did not match a hanging. He had been strangled elsewhere and staged beneath the bridge. 5 suspects faced trial in 2003, including Mafia members, but all were acquitted for lack of evidence. The conclusion was chilling. Calvi had been killed because he knew too much. The Ambrosiano affair exposed more than corruption. It revealed how the Vatican had mastered a system of offshore finance, letters of guarantee, and sovereign immunity. It foreshadowed modern global finance, shell companies, anonymous accounts, and networks that move money across borders, shielding it from oversight. Corporations, oligarchs, and governments now use the same tactics. Faith gave moral cover, sovereignty gave legal cover, and secrecy gave power. The Vatican's methods became a blueprint. In the decades that followed, similar scandals emerged. 1993, Vatican officials caught in a $500 million money laundering scheme. 2010, Italian authorities froze suspicious Vatican accounts. 2013, Pope Benedict XVI resigned amid leaked documents revealing internal corruption. Pope Francis pledged reform, replaced officials, introduced audits, and increased transparency. But the IOR remains opaque, accountable only to the Pope, handling billions beyond any national jurisdiction. The story of Roberto Calvi and the Vatican Bank shows the intersection of belief and finance. It is not just greed, it is the temptation of power, the illusion that serving a higher cause exempts you from rules. The lessons are not confined to the church. Every major institution, governments, corporations, NGOs repeats the same pattern. The greater the ideal, the darker the shadow. Calvi died. The system endured. It evolved, digitized, and globalized. Faith asks for belief without proof. Finance asks for the same. For in the Vatican, both coexist, entwined, and still moving billions in the quiet shadows of power. History doesn't just repeat, it compounds. And the empire Roberto Calvi helped build remains intact. A reminder that money, secrecy, and influence can survive even the highest moral authority.